When you are in that place where you're looking to have a baby, having to wait for 1 year to recover, it's quite emotional, again, quite sad, quite depressive. I have nothing to angry at, but I was not in a very good mental place. I was luckily, I had a few friends who went through IVF. So being able to have a friend speak up and like what they validate my emotions, that was very helpful. And they advised me to like maybe consider IVF. And we were so happy they advised that way. And we follow the IVF process. And luckily it went well. During that phase, I had a wonderful opportunity in front of me to go to the company called Snowflake. And that's where I am right now. And this has been my dream company to work at as solution engineer. I got an offer. There's no way that I could turn that down. Like I want to take that offer. But that means I need to see if that's possible for me to go through the IVF process and the pregnancy process while I onboard the company. And if anyone listening to this story and have changed a company before, the first few months is so crucial. Really wanted to make sure like I performed well through the IVF process. I also like kept working hard because I didn't want to turn anybody down. I was having a wonderful team around me. So I really wanted to keep working with them in performing well. So at the end, I was awarded as a Rookie of the Year at Snowflake. I only announced in a closer team member, but I was 5 months pregnant that time. So that was another big milestone that I'm very happy that I was able to achieve.
Welcome back to Arrivals. My guest today is Yuri Goto. Yuri is a solution engineer at Snowflake, where she manages AI data cloud strategy for major enterprises. But her path to the Bay Area was a decade-long strategy that required a high level of resilience. She navigated the corporate worlds of IBM and Salesforce in Japan before eventually moving to the US, managing her own relocation and bridging a 7-year long-distance marriage. Outside of tech, Yuri is a professional Zumba instructor who built a wellness community to reclaim her own health. She is also a mother, and in this episode, she shares how she navigated the complexities of IVF in the US while simultaneously hitting the highest milestones of her career. We talk about the brutal traditions of Japanese business culture, why AI makes human storytelling more urgent than ever, and why she has built a reputation of being a positive person and simply a joy to be around by her peers and her community. And I think you'll see why in this episode. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm very excited to talk to you and kick this off.
Thank you so much, Mariana. Super happy to be here today.
I would love to start as I'm starting lately all of these conversations. Can you describe yourself for people that don't know you?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Yuri Goto. I'm from Osaka, Japan. I spent most of my life in Osaka and Tokyo, but 5 years ago, I moved to United States, and I currently live in Bay Area, California. My professional occupation is I work at the Snowflake as a solution engineer, and I also work as a professional Zumba instructor as a side. And I'm a mom of one baby and with 2 cats.
I want to start also with how I found you and how we connected, which is that you recently started sharing more about your own culture. And that immediately grabbed my attention because it honors women, it honors first generation immigrants as well, and education. And I was like, I need to talk to this person. So first, just talk about what made you start to share more, especially considering what you share with me, which is Japanese culture is not particularly sharing in that way.
Yeah, there are a couple of reasons why I feel this surge of I want to share more of my stories lately. For instance, one big thing is I've been noticing there's a lot of people in America, they don't hesitate to speak up. and speak out of their own experiences and their thoughts. In that regard, sometimes if you are quiet in the room, feels like you aren't existing there. That's the sense sometimes I would feel. So it's very valued to speak up, like what your thoughts are. So that's the idea I have been encountering for last 5 years that I moved and I work every day. And on top of that, I've been sharing actually, I'm writing that blog article in Japanese and I even have YouTube channels. And so I've been actually trying to output what I have in my thoughts, but then I've been doing that in Japanese.
Oh,
And I
wow.
noticed, yeah, and then I noticed that, but maybe like for the real audience that may find my stories or like any Japanese cultural background interesting is the English speakers, or for the non-English speaking people too, if they can read English, they can read my stories. So that's how I switched my language to English to reach the broader audience. And last piece is the rise of AI. Um, there's no days you don't see the name of AI in our life now. And it is true that AI is bringing up a huge productivities and efficiencies in our life. But then it questioned me that, but where the human elements go, there is always a people and people interactions, in-person interaction, and who you actually are. I felt like those become more and more important than ever. So I thought I should start sharing my thoughts so people out there will know who I am, and it will bring the new connection in our life. That's why.
Yeah, I love that. And not a lot of people coming from other cultures in particular start start doing that more consciously.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a reaction from different people that getting closer to
Yeah.
you, both in the Japanese culture and with Americans?
Yes, the reaction is surprising. Not only I'm getting a lot of reactions on LinkedIn, but also a lot of people send me a direct messages either on LinkedIn or send me a direct message on my phone, and even reach to the other my company coworkers also reached
Mm.
out to me too. They say I found my stories inspiring or very interesting, open up their point of view. So I am very appreciate those positive feedbacks.
Yes, absolutely. Do you want to do it more constantly? Like, or how do you see this going for you
Yes.
personally?
Yeah. So it's been 10 years since I stepped into the workforce. And this 10 years anniversary, I feel like I now have enough things to output. And given I was from Japan and I actually spent time in China and United States while I was student, and I had a quite interesting career journey and career progressions in Japan, as well as how to moved to United States and found my career that I'm passionate about. I was able to land the job and the journey and also become a Zumba instructor. And there's so many things I have in mind. So definitely I'm putting more thoughts together and ready to output more.
Yeah. Wow, 10 years. I want
Thank
to
you.
shift a little bit into growing up in Osaka.
Hmm.
And I want to touch on solo relocation and defining that and how did it impact you
Hmm.
as a kid?
Yeah, I am very proud I'm from Osaka. Osaka people think Osaka is the best city in Japan.
Yeah, I
And a lot
agree.
of yes, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of great personality of people. Osaka people are tend to know very fun and very easygoing. So I'm very happy that I grown up in that lovely city. And as per my family wise, my mother was a stay-home parent, and my father was working for a company over 30 years actually right now to the same company. And in Japan, there's an interesting system called lifetime employment. So in Japan, there is no laid off actually. So as long as you show loyalty to the company will protect employment for rest of your life. So that's why it's very important to land what company first right after you graduate the university. And my father was a very typical example of that lifetime employment. And so he was able to land at the leading steel manufacturing company in Japan. And that's where he still work up there. But actually, I didn't live with my father since 10 years old. That is because my father was appointed as tanshin funin in Japanese. That means solo relocations to the other city. And I would say this is pretty brutal Japanese business tradition that if the company can appoint any employees to relocate to other cities and work for that regional office by themselves. And typically they don't offer an option to bring a family together. So it must be a very, very tough decisions for my mom and my father because I also have younger sister. But they decided to leave the kids in the home we grew up and we had our dad to move to the other city. So I actually haven't lived with him for like longer than 10 years. So I think it was like affecting my point of view and how my mom was protecting the effort and challenges that she faced. That was the day to day that I faced. So that formed my experience quite a bit. And later they separated. And that time also I saw her struggle to get back into being financially independent because she has been a stay-home parent for so many years, and that was the tradition that she was living in too, because she grew up and raised in the traditional value where women should be pretty and women should be obedient to the male men and you should get married to somebody who give you a good life. And she followed exactly that. So career progression or the ability to be able to earn big money to support herself, that wasn't her priority. And that was okay. That was her era that she lived in. But then fast forward when it comes to separation, it hit her very hard because she doesn't even know where to start. And seeing her struggle like that, I think that was the foundation of me eager to be independent. How to say, women should be the biggest supporter by ourselves, and I want to achieve a better career. So I think that experience was forming me quite a lot.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Well, how old were you when they got divorced?
It was actually later in teenager, probably teenage. So I wasn't, like 13 or 14 years old. But still, like that was long enough to see her struggle. She also always said, I don't want to divorce for you, meaning for me and my sister. But kids are smart. Kids see things, and kids can smell. Kids can sense the tensions between the parents. So I'm very happy for them in terms of like they are in a happier place now. So they made a decision that works for them.
Yes. I'm also from divorced parents. I completely understand.
Hmm.
Every couple is different, but of course, yes, like you're saying, kids are smart and they can see things very clearly. In my case, once where they're divorced, it was a relief. In your case, your mom, like you said, had to start over in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Regarding the solo relocation, I'm curious, as a child, I imagine this was very hard to understand. So, how did your parents talk to you about this? How did you come to understand that later as a teen, maybe that this was something that your dad needed to do
Hmm.
or you're just used to it?
Yeah, I think I was 10 years old, so I guess I was more so accepting the absence of father figure in the daily life. But I was also thankful. My mom was enforcing the reason why he is in a solo relocation is because to support our family. And even indirectly, financially, he is supporting us. So by her telling us, and that made me feel like understanding of the situations. But I fully agreeing with the system itself, absolutely not. Because I think this solo relocation is very Japanese culture specific. And this is acting like a royalty test for the employee. So if the employee said, no, I don't want to relocate, then the company could threaten you like, well, then you don't want to have a lifetime employment. So I basically think like my father like didn't have a choice. And oftentimes this is also used as a leverage of the promotion. So, hey, like if you stay there for 2 years, when you come back, there's a bigger promotion awaits you. So there is like carrot in front of the horse used as a tactic. But what usually happens is after 2 years, they can't come back. And that's what happened to my father too. They just said, hey, can you extend for 2 more years? Can you extend 3 more years? That's how it become almost 10 years.
That's brutal.
Mhm.
That's a lot. And is this still very common in Japan?
A good question. And I think it's slightly less common, but I still like hear those happens quite often. So unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's not the past yet.
Yes, and I don't think it's talked about enough. I never heard about it until you mentioned it.
Hmm.
Another culture aspect that was very interesting and that you mentioned
Hmm.
that there is a cremation ceremony
Hmm.
that shaped how you
Yeah.
think about death. And I want to talk a little bit about this. Can you explain
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, sure. So a little bit of context here is I didn't think too hard about this until I get a lot of feedback lately that, hey, you're like, why you're so resilient? Like you are so strong and you're so positive. I'm getting a lot of feedback like that lately. And that gives me a pose of like, like why am I that way? Like why am I always positive and why am I always um try not to waste too much time to mourning something like I don't have control to change. Then that led me to this memory from the childhood. So there is a cremation ceremony. The cremation is the most common way to say goodbye to the past ones. And by age of 10, I lost five close family members. So I attended five funerals. And this okotsuhiroi means pick up the bones. So after the cremation, we face the body that is completely um, it's purely a bomb because it's after the cremation and you want to face them. And this is the act of showing the highest respect. And that is to pick up the bones and put it in the special containers. And if you can picture the situation, it's quite heavy. It's quite heavy experience and see somebody you loved change to the shape like that and 5 times to experience that. It was at the time growing up, and that was totally normal experience, and I wasn't sure how to digest that feeling. But now I'm looking back, that experience told me that life is short and we don't know what's going to happen. And there is no time to regret something that in the past. And you just need to keep looking ahead and be positive. So yeah, that is an interesting Japanese tradition that reminded me
Yeah.
of that.
Is the intent of doing that is what you're saying to look at life in a more positive?
No, no, that's just the lessons learned for me because in a way, AKA, I think as a kid, it was a little bit traumatic, because
Yes, of course. Yes.
we often don't see those scenes, and I saw those scenes, and that was part of the culture and traditions. But I think some parents, in general, probably don't let the kids to see or be participate those experience. I think my parents were quite hardcore, quite hardcore to let the kids to experience that. So it's really the showing the act of respect. There are certain body parts that considered the most valuable and the close to the Buddha. So for instance, the bones in the throat is the shape of the Buddha. It's considered as the shape of the Buddha. So this part is very important. And it's basically the ceremony itself is to pick up the little piece from entire body parts and put it in the container so they can spend a good life in the next life as well.
Yeah, that's very intense and beautiful
It
at the
is,
same time.
yeah, that is true. It has a both aspect to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, me being from Mexico, there's a lot of cults here to death, a lot of
Hmm.
traditions that are more globally known, and but people here see it like the death should be more of a celebration. That's why I asked of the purpose of doing that. But it sounds like in Japan is more to honor that life and not make the living feel good about it necessarily. It's just to
Yeah,
to
that's an
honor the
interesting
person.
point.
Yeah.
In Mexico, the Day of the Dead is the death is treated so differently. And that was mind-blowing for me because in where I live, there is a lot of Mexican population too. So during the Day of the Dead, there's a lot of decorations and there's a lot of events happening. Seeing that, that's so colorful and that's so festive. That's the quite opposite of what the how the Japan treats the death.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm curious of other
Hmm.
cultures that we don't know about see death too in that way.
Yeah.
I want to shift into immigration and what made you immigrate for the first time. I know the first time was to China
Hmm.
and that you were accepted at Peking University as one of the top Chinese language presenters for
Yeah.
international students. First, I
Hmm.
want to ask why China? And when did you started thinking about this more seriously? Just like, oh,
Hmm.
I wanna leave Japan, go somewhere specific, or did these things just happen?
Yeah. And I would say the journey came up pretty organically, but I was always having the goal and dream to work abroad professionally. And I felt like that was my way to go. So little bit of turning the clock back to when I was high school student. Because of that experience of my parents and seeing my mother was struggling with the all the career development and become independence, that journey that I mentioned earlier, that gave me a strong idea of I want to be independent and I first need to build a really good education. So that's why I studied so hard um, before I take the university exams. I literally studied 16 hours a day. And I even stopped going to high school because I was so arrogant, but I felt like my high school was so mediocre and they didn't provide me the level of education that I needed to pass the university I wanted to go. So I stopped going and I just studied at home. I bought tons of books and then I just learned, educated myself. And that was the first time I ever had a runny and bloody nose. I didn't know like bloody nose could happen out of like studying too hard. But I think now I think about it, that was the amount of stress I was going through. The reason of the study is I wanted to get into the good university. And as a good university in Tokyo is one I really wanted to go. But I didn't pass it. That was I if I had one more score, I was able to pass. But that one score made my fate, and I couldn't pass that university, the dream university I wanted to go. So I ended up going to more local university in Kyoto. There's the commutable distance from Osaka, and that experience hit me so hard. And I was in the dark for entire first 1 year at university. I was like really, regretting like, oh, I should have done that. Like, why my life is like this? And I totally wasted 1 year. But then that experience came back of, wait a minute, like I wasted enough time. Like it's no more morning. I have to find what I have already and what I can take advantage of from what I already have and how I can progress from here. After wasting 1 year mentally, I just decided to move on. And that's when there was opportunity to study in Peking University. And China was a really interesting country because I and I went to university in 2011 and a year previous year, 2010, that's the year that China's GDP exceeded Japan's GDP. So for a long time, United States was always being a number one in GDP, and Japan was number two, and China was number three. But 2010, China exceeded it, and so that caught my interest. The China, and it's everywhere. The newspapers and the magazines, everybody is talking about China is coming. So I thought maybe China gonna be an interesting place to go. So that's why I applied for that program and I was luckily I got into it. And in China, it was mind-blowing experience. Literally, the Chinese people, I felt that everybody believed that tomorrow will be better. Like that's the amount of passion I just felt just to be there. When I was there, it was 2012. So that was a really interesting moment to be in there. And as per academic wise, um, Chinese students are so smart and so diligent. For instance, in Japan at university, if there's a big room, the students will start to sitting down from the bottom rows, like where the closest to the exit. Nobody gonna sit in front of the row. They sit in the most back row. In China, quite the opposite. In a big room, there everybody starts sitting from the front row, right in front of the professors. And not only that, there's a little post-it on the table. And I was like, what is this post-it? Let's take a look. And the post-it says, hi, this physics class at 1 p.m. Well, this place is reserved by me. Like that's literally the post-it said so. So it was
Oh my
so
God.
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's how people are serious on the achieving academic wise and achieving the good career. So that's the quite an interesting experience. And that time I set a goal of, hey, now I'm in a Peking University. What I can do to make a difference. And there was Chinese presentation contest for all the international students, and the participant was about 600 people. And I decided I want to win this contest. So I prepped and I was able to have one of the top Grand Prix. So that was a foundation experience of when I set a goal, I want to prepare, I want to build a plan, I want to prepare strategically and marching towards that goal. And that is a foundation of my method coming from that experience of winning that award. And during that time, I met so many intelligent friends internationally. And a lot of people are coming from English speaking countries. And then I realized, my experience in China is coming to end. I have to go back to a university in Japan and complete my degree. But what if I take a gap year and I explore the English speaking countries, then I can learn all the big countries. Again, for instance, the United States was number one in GDP, so there's a lot to learn to be there to learn too. So that was my plan. I built a plan and I went back to Japan and I started to see how I can do that. I quickly realized I don't have money. I didn't have money. Okay, how do I solve this problem? And I applied for a couple of scholarships that per Japanese federal organizations, and I was able to get some sponsorship from the scholarship program. And then I was able to come to United States, and that's how I studied at the University of California, Irvine, and as well as a little internship experience in San Francisco. That's where I later met my husband. So we had been together for 12 years this year. Um, yeah, and then I moved back and I completed my degree in Japan. And my husband was quite understanding of me building the career in Japan. And that means we are long distance because he is from America. So, but he was really understanding that my goal was to build a good career. And my English wasn't as good as now. So the best bet for me was to find a right career in Japan. Then a few years later, we could think about the move to Bay Area to find a job professionally.
I just
Okay.
wanted to ask about the language specifically.
Okay.
And about the two language, you know three very well. But was Chinese a language that you taught yourself?
I studied in university. My major is called global communications. So anything about the like each country's politics and economic balance and the cultures and different cultural communications was my major. And I took Chinese as a side. So that's how I practice
Got
Chinese.
it. Okay. And English is when you moved to the US that you actually learned
Mhm.
as you went and as you lived there.
Yeah, I think, being able to speak the boyfriend in the English or texting each other in English, I think that's a fundamental good practice, try to speak to each other. And it's not always a good time, right? Sometimes you need to fight. You need to speak up what you're thinking. Because of course for the English native person, it's easy to speak up and say things. And I was wanna go like when it comes to argument, I also want to make sure I win the argument. So those are little, and I know it's cliche. I know a lot of people say those things, but like those help me to want to speak more fluent English. And also, eventually, my goal is argument is a joke, but longer term, I wanted to work in America or other foreign country professionally. So every moment was my practice opportunity. I took it seriously.
Yes, I'm sure you did. You're so
Mhm.
ambitious. And I love I love that. I wanted to stop on the language because sometimes we talk about it like, oh yes, I speak two, three languages, but it's actually something that is hard in the day
Mhm.
to day in a new country.
For sure.
And building a relationship, I'm also married to an American. I know that it sounds like, oh, whatever, I speak English, but doing something that is that serious and be able to communicate like you want is something that, yeah, also we don't talk about enough.
True.
So, talking about long distance
Hmm.
and how you were long distance for 7 years after you decided to go back to Japan.
Hmm.
I just want to understand what made you stay in that relationship for so long? Not as a judgy question. I'm just
Hmm.
curious to know. It's a significant distance. It's not
Hmm.
like I'll just take a flight tomorrow and book
Yeah.
it for next week. It's just
Yeah. Yeah, I think I briefly touched on, but our mutual understanding and a supportive attitude of each other's career played a significant role in here. So we both respected his career progressions and my career progressions. And yeah, the distance was the problem, but we both knew each other that like supporting each other's career was our form of love. And also, we were able to come see each other a couple times a year. For instance, I am attending my husband's side of family Christmas every year. And the last year was the 11th Christmas we spent time together. And this year gonna be 12. And we every year we take the same picture at the same locations of the same family members. So it's super fun. And we always talk, so we can always connect to each other on a video call or texting. So that's the way it like worked for us. I know this isn't for everybody, but I also know a lot of friends who done the long distance and ended up working. So yeah, it's really up to the each couple, I think.
yes,
Mhm.
and constant communication is key for that.
Yeah.
And when you moved to the US to relocate again, talk a little bit about building your marriage, of course, in the same place,
Hmm.
and also your career again in the US.
So one important thing to touch on is I was very unsure of what career should I build. I had a big dream of I want to succeed in my career, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was my strength. Didn't know what was my interest. I knew language was something sparked my interest, but I also wanted to find something outside of being a professional translator. So that's when I studied in California. I came to San Francisco. And that's when I saw a lot of engineers and a lot of startups were actively discussing about their business ideas and their prototypes, and they are constantly building something. And that is an environment I never experienced. I never be myself put in that position. So I was like, this is very interesting. And they are literally building something usable for millions of users and helping a lot of companies to generate the revenues and all that. That's when I realized tech is it. I want to be in the tech industry. So after I come back to Japan, that was the pillar of my job search, and I was able to land at the job at IBM Japan. One thing to notice, maybe some of our listeners think, wait, but your major is global communications. How did you land the job in tech? I think I have an answer for you. That is in Japan, as I mentioned earlier, there is a lifetime employment program. So basically, when company hired somebody, they protect them and they nurture them and they invest money to educate to keep them working until you grow very old, until you retire, basically. And as part of that program, if you are good enough talent for them to hire, there is usually an educational program. And that's exactly what IBM had it too for a few months, a very intensive tech onboarding program. So basically those is like a boot camp. Like we will make you to become an engineer. So that was a program all the new hires was enrolling. So that I was part of that program. So I think they saw people who have room for growth, potential growth, like they hire them and then they nurture them basically. So that's how I get into the tech industry as a non-technical background student. And then I was spending time for 3 years. That was a great time. I was learning a lot of things because I didn't know anything, right? So every day was a new learning. And then I learned a lot of business culture side too of Japan. There's a good and there's bad, but I saw that a lot of things. And through that, I noticed I really like a customer facing role. I love solving customers' problem and I love technologies. And is there any positions that like those two gonna combine each other, can meet each other? I was thinking the next step after 3 years at IBM. That's when I was reached out by one of the recruiter and he said, hey, there's a position called sales engineer. Would you be interested in it? And I'm still thankful to him till this day that he reached out to me because I didn't know that role exists. I didn't know the engineer can exist in the sales department. So that's how I stepped into the role as a sales engineer, also known as solution engineer. I was in Japan. I was working in the office, beautiful office in Ginza area. I love that experience. I still talk with the ex-coworkers, like how beautiful those days were. We had so much fun. And yeah, so that was a really wonderful time. And I was a new sales engineer, but that's when I slowly progressed my career, the sales engineer that I truly love even now. And I'm gonna love this position for like in the future too. And that's how I slowly grew into this role. And that's when I noticed, future husband, we are long distance. And I feel like 7 years is a long time. And now I feel very comfortable to where I am and the skill set I can bring into the new country. And so let's talk about like what works best for us. And since Japan is still pretty like closed environment in terms of like working culture wise, I think if you don't speak any Japanese, it's very hard to find high paying role
Yeah.
in Japan.
Mhm.
And then my husband, Japanese isn't his forte. So I decided to, then I'm going to move to Bay Area. So that's when my job search started. I would say I'm fortunate that the fact that my husband is American that made me eligible to have a green card as a spouse. So I didn't have the complicated visa issues on that note. It took time, yes, but it's not like that there's a complication to it. But I didn't use that as an excuse. I still like wanted to find the job, even though like if I didn't have this marriage status, can I land the job in Bay Area? That has always been the motivation. So I made sure I have enough skill set before I started job hunting in Bay Area. So I basically tried to be a top sales and one of the top sales engineer when I was working in Japan. And then prior to coming to United States, I found a few hiring managers either on LinkedIn or use the internal systems because at the end of the day, I did an internal transfer between Japan and United States. I worked at a company called
Got it.
Tableau,
Mm-hmm.
but later it was acquired by Salesforce. So I did an internal transfer at Salesforce. Just because there is an internal transfer program doesn't mean the company will be like white glove support for the relocation. Like you are the owner of the relocations and job hunting. So I did all the networking, finding the positions, finding the potential open headcount in next quarters, and finding the managers to network with and keep brushing up the skill so I can fight against the local candidate. So those are the things that I did. And luckily I was able to land a few positions, Salesforce internally as well as external some offers, then I decided to keep becoming a solution engineer at Tableau because that's what I love the most.
Yeah, that's amazing, and you really really worked to accomplish what you wanted and got several offers. That's not something from a very long distance. I just want to acknowledge all the work.
Yeah, thank
It
you.
can be very exhausting too. Moving to the Bay Area and working finally like in the same city. I want to switch more to motherhood now.
Hmm.
Is this something that you always wanted, or it grew more on you as you progressed as well with your career and your marriage?
Yeah, I think I wasn't thinking too hard about it until early 20s. And about the mid 20s, I slowly started seeing myself as a potential, becoming a potential mother. And then I quite liked it. So yes, as growing up, I didn't think too hard about it. But after after started working, I think that idea was quite clear that at some point I really wanted to have a kids.
Yeah. How old is your kid now?
He's 8 months today.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So this just happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that if you're comfortable. You went through a miscarriage and you went
Mhm.
through IVF to
Mhm.
to be able to have what you have today.
Yeah.
How was that process in the US? And I'm asking this because, of course, the health system can be extremely hard to navigate. I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share. So after I moved to the United States, we were trying to look into extend the family. We want to have a kids. And but things is not always going well. And our happy pregnancy announcement just between my husband and I, which was a very happy moment, quickly turned into a nightmare. And that was quite emotional ride on social media. There's a lot of pregnancy announcement videos, and there's so many ideas. Oh, I wanna share this post to like family members. Oh, I can't imagine like how happy they're gonna be. You're gonna think all those things because when you are in the shoes of ready to have a kids, it's quite an emotional journey. But unfortunately, it became miscarriage, and afterwards, that caused medical complexity to it, and we couldn't proceed to have a baby for longer than a year. And again, when you are in that place where you're looking to have a baby, having to wait for 1 year to recover, it's quite emotional, again, quite sad, quite depressive. And during that time, I saw a lot of people around me started to announcing the pregnancy and deliver the baby. And from my eyes, everything is beautiful except for
Yeah.
me. And that was a very difficult time. And I'm not gonna lie, right? Like I felt quite sad, quite depressed, and quite angry at to nothing. Like I have nothing to angry at, but I was not in a very good mental place. I was luckily I had a few friends who went through IVF and who went through exactly the same emotion too. Like before they had baby, they knew exactly how I felt. So being able to have a friend speak up and like what they validate my emotions, that was very helpful. And they advised me to like maybe consider IVF. And we were so happy they advised that way. And we follow the IVF process. And luckily it went well. So that's how we have a baby now. But I want to also touch on how the career came into place while I we were working through the IVF and the pregnancy too. So right before we start to proceed with IVF, we go to the infertility center and then we talk all the plans and ready to get a shot. And are you ready to have a shot every day? Like that's the next step, right? And during that phase, I had a wonderful opportunity in front of me to go to the company called Snowflake. And that's where I am right now. And this has been my dream company to work at as solution engineer. And the little side note is I tried to interview at Snowflake for 3 times and before that. And every time I slowly progressed the stage each time, but still like I couldn't reach the final interview and I couldn't get an offer. And that time I finally had a chance to present at the final presentations and I got an offer. So that was a there's no way that I could turn that down. Like I want to take that offer. But that means I need to see if that's possible for me to go in through the IVF process and the pregnancy process while I onboard the company. And if anyone listening to this story and have changed the company before, the first few months is so crucial. Really wanted to make sure like I performed well and I built a really good network within the company. So that was the big thing like I needed to consider. And other element, America specific, is the insurance. The American medical insurance structure is and all the healthcare services are structured so differently compared to Japan. So me switching to the company, meaning potentially mean switching to the different insurance company. And how does that entail for the IVF program that I'm trying to going through? So there's a lot of things to consider. But I was able to I spoke with a lot with my husband too about the planning. And we always find a solution, and everybody does. But we found a solution that works for us. And through the IVF process, I also like kept working hard because I didn't want to turn anybody down. I was having a wonderful team around me, my solution engineering team, managers, and the sales team, and I had great people. So I really wanted to keep working with them in performing well. And then yeah, so at the end, I was awarded as a Rookie of the Year at Snowflake in FY25. And that time I only announced in a closer team member, but I was 5 months pregnant that time. So that was another big milestone that I'm very happy that I was able to achieve.
Yes. How long you been at Snowflake at this point?
Almost 2 years.
And why did you want it to work so badly specifically with this company? I'm not that
Yeah.
familiar with it. Oh,
To me, as a solution engineer, I have two important criteria. And
yeah,
one is if I can love the product that I'm going to sell. And second one is if I can love working with the people in that company. And the Snowflake solution and the product, I always has been a big fun. That's why I'm here, right? It's a really cool product. We do a lot of cool things with using AI recently to help our customers. And the second part about the people to work with is I always looked into the opportunity to work with the people who I looked up to. And so a lot of people actually moved from the previous workplace to Snowflake. So that was a huge green flag for me that for those people who I respected, they moved to this company. And this company like must be a really good place to work at. And if I'm here, I can keep working with those people too. So that was a big criteria for me to choose this company.
that makes sense. And you kept trying, which is very important to acknowledge as well. The rejection can be tough.
Mhm.
And it sounds like a lot of things like motherhood for you also overlap with that process, but you kept going.
Yeah. And
That's
every
amazing.
rejections hurts. I'm a human being too. So when I get a rejection message, sometimes no feedback too. And that's really difficult to digest. And sometimes I feel not just Snowflake, but any rejection, I feel like, oh, I'm not going to interview with you ever again. Like that's the feeling I would have. But and that's valid. That's a valid feeling. And then I let it sit for 3 weeks, few months, let myself cool down, focusing on the work right in front of me. Because it's very important to keep performing well at where you are right now. You don't want to burn any bridges because any industry, I'm in tech industry, but an industry is smaller than we think. So the people are connecting each other. So you do want to build a good reputation at where you are. So that's what I did. I kept working hard at where I was at. And a few months later, maybe it's time to try again. I totally forget about the hardship of the rejection and re- remember of the goal that I had. Oh, it's a good product. So many good people are working. That's a good reason for me to try again.
Yes, it can be very hard, the rejection, especially from a place that you really want. And in tech, I think it's very important, like you said, to really, really like the product because the job is one thing, but if you're not really into the product, the work can be very hard.
Mhm.
I want to finalize with some things. You're a Zumba instructor, and I want to talk a little bit about that. First, why Zumba outside of work? Of all the things.
So before going into Zumba, I had no workout habit at all. So when I was working, I'm sitting, not even standing for longer than 8 hours a day. And I was fine because I was young. And one day, when I stood up, I felt a huge pain going through my leg. And that's when I noticed I had sciatica. And that's when I was 28 years old. And that's when I noticed, wait a minute, I am a little too young to have sciatica problem. And that's the moment needed to review my everyday habit. And then I quickly notices, well, clearly I'm not working out. And that's a biggest contributor of this problem. So that's how I decided to start workout. And then, okay, what I'm gonna do. And running, not my thing. Tennis, not my thing. And then dancing is something caught my eye because dancing and moving my body with music is something I always loved. But dancing wasn't never be my parents' priority or focus. We were in it's probably a little more stronger idea in Asia, but we we study hard. If you have time, study hard to get into the better education, get into the better opportunity. If you have time, don't go to dance school. Go to the second school after the school. So I didn't have any opportunity as I growing up, and I missed it. I missed it. And I'm grown up now. Nobody gonna tell me what to do. And then I can do it. That's how I decided to do a dance fitness. And I found a Zumba class in my neighborhood. And I went there, and the instructor has been so wonderful. And I quickly fell in love with all the moves and workout element of it. And my physical strength grown up significantly. And then my Zumba instructor told me that, hey, like Yuri, you're always dancing in a front row and you have good moves and energy. Why don't you start considering become a Zumba instructor? And that really opened my eye because I never thought of it. I never thought I'll be a fitness instructor like that. But that was something truly I was passionate about. And that Zumba instructor who invited me to become one, that time she was already over 50 years old, but she is the fittest woman I ever seen. And she has biggest smile on her face all the time. And she also have a full-time day job too. So she's doing Zumba instructor as a side. And that was a huge inspiration to me because in Japan, sadly, women's are often considered the best age is when they're younger. When they're 20th, great, but women over 30 years old, the social worth could decrease. That is the sad, very sad, but there's a lot of social perspectives. And I don't believe that, but
Yeah.
I think that helped me to form the idea of like I I'm almost 30. I I'm not at the place of like starting something new. But that instructor, she proved me wrong. And I loved that. And I decided to take up that opportunity. And she slowly invited me to become her sub instructor. And that's how I slowly get into the next step where I have my own class and I do all the promotions and marketing and executions and the follow up and all those things by myself. And I'm just love it so much. I think those Zumba students community are so wonderful and that's really forming my life in a very positive way right now.
Yeah, I love that. I'm
Yeah.
gonna sign up for one of your classes.
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
I?
yeah. Come to the area. Of course.
Yes.
I have online class too.
Yeah, I saw your site. So Zumba is not common in Japan, or is it like as a workout class?
Actually, I think there's
Um,
a big population of Zumba community in Japan.
oh,
I just didn't
yeah.
aware of it when I was there.
To wrap up, I want to go back a little bit to the beginning of the what you're sharing more and how the impact of AI as well is making you do that. Going forward, what human skills matter most to you, considering the tech world that we're living in?
It's very interesting. It's not that I have crystal clear answer. That's something I am still thinking and what could be a potential answers. But I would really want to tell my kids that human relationship is very important. It's not so much of how smart each people are, but if you are arrogant, you're not very attractive. If you're maybe ultra smart and maybe you're earning so much money, but if you are having rude attitude to the other people, people will leave you. And so be a good person, be a genuine person, and offer help when you can. And don't hesitate to ask for help. It's something I want to tell my kids because I think especially for our era of AI, everybody is empowered by the AI tool. So it's quite natural progress that we will be more smarter and we will process things faster. But without that, who you are, if we don't have any internet connection, if you don't have any mobile device, let's have a fireside chat in the mountain. What can you offer? Who you are, what have you done, who you are, and what your personalities are. I think that's more important. So I hope that's something to tell myself too. Who you are is more important than the tools.
Of course. What final question? What brings you more joy these days?
One thing that I didn't have until recently is friendship. And that's something maybe a little surprising, but here's the reason. From 19 years old until 5 years ago when I moved to United States, I never lived in one location longer than 2 years. Sometimes I moved to the next location as soon as 3 months, and sometimes as long as 2 years I stay one place, but I then moved to the new location. Sometimes new country, sometimes new cities, sometimes in the same city but at different locations. So one thing I definitely missed in my 20s was that keeping the long relationship with the friend. And a lot of friends said they are so sad when I leave that place because they can't see me anymore. I'm so sad that I didn't value their emotions as much. And I felt like, okay, but I move on. I know it sounds terrible, but I
Uh,
had I had
No, I'm
other things
sorry.
to chase. I was too career driven in that note. Like if there's a career goal, I didn't see anything else. I just was focusing on it. And then I'm very happy where I am right now, but building longer term friendship is something I missed building for a long time. And that's something I'm making up to it right now after because Bay Area is a place I'm rooting now. I live in the same place for almost 5 years. This never happened for a long time. And I'm very happy to build a good friends community, my neighborhood friend and my Zumba friend. And they help me and I help them and I love it. Yeah, so friendship is something I found it most important.
Yeah. I completely empathize with how we think of friends of the past, and we're like, I should have kept more in touch with this person or be more um conscious about just maintaining that friendship.
Yes,
Which is,
exactly.
yeah, something that I struggle with as well in my life. Thank you so much, Yuri. I just want to say I really admire your work ethic and how you really put these goals for yourself since you were very young. That's not something I think a lot of immigrants have that, but I see it in you, like you strategize since you were very young to accomplish exactly what you wanted, and you made a plan and you went for it and you stick with what was important to
Thank you so much, Mariana. And you're a wonderful interviewer too.
you.
Thank you for
Thank
asking
you
the
so much.
excellent questions.
Of course. Thank you for being here. That was Judy Goto. What really sticks with me from this conversation is the sheer level of strategy that she applied to her life, even turning 20 years old, and how she engineered her own move to the US while hitting her stride at Snowflake. She truly is a reminder that being resilient is often just a result of being very disciplined. And it's rare to meet someone who balances that level of ambition with such a clear-eye understanding of their own cultural history. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I'll see you in the next one.